uncover the real-life origins behind all those classic Halloween cliches of zombies, vampires, and werewolves.
Please welcome a woman who revels in the dark history of scientific discovery, curator at Bart's Pathology Museum in London, Carla Valentine.
It's very nice to have somebody else doing the work, isn't it, really? So is there truth behind all these weird figures who are very much a part of Halloween? There's some substance in there somewhere.
I think so. I think the idea really is that before people really knew medicine and knew the physical characteristics of some diseases, they would think of them as having a kind of superstitious origin. So that's where some of the legends came from.
Well, what about vampires? I mean, where on earth did vampires come from?
Well, there's a condition called porphyria, which is actually a metabolic disorder.
Well,
7
George
different
III
types.
is reputedly
Reputed
suffered from it, isn't it?
yeah, exactly, and it can cause some sort of madness. But what it really is a problem in the heme of the blood. So people with porphyria are anemic. So that means they may have a craving for iron, or as some scientists would say, they would crave blood. But not only that, they actually have a cutaneous condition, meaning on their skin, very sensitive to light. So sunlight might cause them to come out in blisters and rashes. So they might want to go out in the evenings instead.
I'm getting the clues now. They want to go out in the evenings, not in the daylight. They quite like drinking blood. Yeah, anything else?
They also have a condition in their teeth, which is erythrodontia. And this means that the red parts of the heme get deposited in the enamel. So the teeth go red. So it looks like they've been drinking blood.
But they clearly are, aren't they?
And as well as that, they even get sort of sparse bits of hair growth, sometimes on the forehead, sometimes on the backs of the hands. And in the old Victorian Gothic novels, vampires had sort of odd bits of hair in strange places. There is one scientist who's also said that garlic would be particularly dangerous to people with porphyria because of the enzymes in it. It's never been corroborated, but it adds to the myth.
You start piecing all these things together, you suddenly realise where you are. What about werewolves?
Well, werewolves, similar vein, excess hair is from a condition called hypertrichosis. And again, these are rare conditions.
So people are absolutely facially covered in hair.
Head to toe, women and men, all along the face and all down the body. And what also happens is a gum condition, which is called gingival hyperplasia, and that means the gums grow outwards. So already you can see that they're not only hairy.
Well, they're sort of getting a sort of snout effect.
Exactly,
yeah.
And
Did you know all this? I had no idea about this.
So it can cause the teeth to be quite jagged. There's a very famous woman who had hypertrichosis, and she had 2 rows of teeth on the top and the bottom. And unfortunately, people didn't understand these conditions, and they were, displayed or employed at freak shows and called half man, half wolf, etc., etc.
Gosh, what a way to live a life. Now, we saw a lot of them here, and they are, of course, are zombies. So where does the zombie bit come from?
Well, theoretically, this comes from leprosy. A lot of people know about leprosy. It doesn't make bits of the body die and fall off, which is what the dancers looked like was happening to them. But what it does do is it gets rid of the sensation in your nerves, in your fingers and your toes.
You
can't feel anything. So if, for example, you get an injury, an infection, you won't feel it happening. So a lot of people in poor areas who've got leprosy may be asleep, maybe rats crawl in the middle of the night, start gnawing away at their fingers and their nose, and they can't tell because they've got no feeling.
So the loss of flesh comes in fact from being eaten away because they can't feel it.
Exactly, and many, many years ago the Catholic Church actually considered lepers the walking dead. They were known as the zombies of the Middle East because they were kept segregated from everybody else, and they had to wear a bell and people could hear them coming, and they had no rights. So.
We've got various things along the front here. What have we got here?
Well, this one is a specimen of leprosy.
Yeah.
A couple of these are to do with anemia. So here, for example, is a spleen.
Yeah.
Normally in a human being, a spleen should be about the size of a fist, but this one is enlarged in an anemic. And we've also got a heart over here, which is for our next specimen at the very end.
And we're talking now Frankenstein. Mary Shelley wrote this novel, didn't she?
Absolutely.
Called Frankenstein. Based on what?
Well, in the 1790s, there was a scientist called Luigi Galvani, and what he would do is experiments on dead animals and bits and pieces of animals removed from the main hub of the animal, and he'd apply electricity and try and get them to sort of twitch and come alive again. And this became known as galvanism. So before long, we started to experiment on humans. It happened to a lot of convicts who were killed for their crime because that was the punishment of the day in the 1800s. And this man, Mr. John Bellingham, he killed the Prime Minister in 1812.
Spencer Percival.
Exactly. And he was hanged and anatomised. And what they did is they removed his heart, and we've just got a heart here for you to see what that would look like. They applied a current to him and to the heart, and it beat for 4 hours autonomously. So Mary Shelley had this idea that maybe you could take several several different pieces from different cadavers, put them together and use electricity as a sort of spark of life. And that's fiction, as we all know, but we still do use electricity. We do, exactly, so there is some truth.
It says about, is this his skull? This is the skull of the man who assassanated Spencer Percival.
Yep, that's his very skull, and he's in our museum at Bart's Pathology Museum in London.
So there is substance to all these fairy stories that we thought.
Absolutely.
Something in there, there's more than a germ of truth. Astonishing, isn't it? Spooky stuff. My thanks to Carla Valentine.